August 22nd, 1962, a black Citroën rounds a corner in suburban Paris, and 8 seconds of gunfire nearly rewrites the Cold War. The driver doesn't know it yet, but he's about to survive the most coordinated assassination attempt on a sitting Western leader in the post-war era. His name is Francis Marroux. De Gaulle's in the back seat, reading a newspaper, utterly unaware that a network of former military officers has spent months planning this exact moment. I've read the police reconstruction myself. The geometry of it all is almost surgical. But let's rewind. To understand Petit-Clamart, you need to understand the OAS, the Organisation de l'Armée Secrète. These weren't common assassins. They were colonels, majors, men with decorations, men who'd fought in Indochina and Algeria. They believed de Gaulle had betrayed France, and in their minds they were patriots committing tyrannicide. Algeria, that's the wound that never closed. From 1954 to 1962, France poured blood and treasure into a colonial war it couldn't win. By the time de Gaulle took power in 1958, the conflict had already cost over 100,000 lives. French settlers, the Pays-Noirs, had built lives there for generations. They saw Algeria as French soil, not a colony to be abandoned. De Gaulle, though, was a pragmatist. He knew the war was unwinnable. In March 1962, he signed the Évian Accords, granting Algeria independence. To the OAS, this was betrayal wrapped in diplomatic language. Their general, their savior, had abandoned the cause. Worse, he'd abandoned them. The Pays-Noirs began fleeing. The officers felt humiliated, and some of them decided de Gaulle had to die. The OAS had already tried once. In April 1961, a group of generals, Charles de Gaulle and Salin, attempted a coup. It failed within days, but it didn't dismantle the network. If anything, it radicalized it. The men left behind, the ones without rank or political leverage, decided the only language de Gaulle would understand was a bullet. By summer 1962, the assassination team was in place. They called themselves the Delta Commando, 12 men, mostly veterans, led by a former paratrooper named Jean-Marie Bastien-Thiry. They'd studied de Gaulle's schedule obsessively. They knew he traveled to his country home at Colomiers-du-Église every weekend. They knew the route, they knew the timing. All they needed was the right stretch of road. They chose Petit-Clamart, a quiet neighborhood southwest of Paris. On August 22, 1962, they positioned themselves along the Boulevard de la République. 2 cars blocked the road ahead. 3 men with submachine guns waited in the bushes. Bastien-Thiry sat in a nearby vehicle, watching. Everything was choreographed. Everything was ready. De Gaulle's Citroën DS was due at 4:15 in the afternoon. The car arrives. Marroux sees the blockade ahead and instinctively accelerates. That split-second decision, maybe it saves de Gaulle's life. The gunfire erupts, 84 bullets, the back window shatters. De Gaulle's bodyguard, a man named Comard, takes rounds in the shoulder. The general himself is hit, but the angle is wrong, the velocity diminished. The bullets barely penetrate his clothing. Marroux floors the accelerator. The Citroën, a marvel of French engineering, responds. It accelerates past the second ambush position before they can fire effectively. De Gaulle, still reading his newspaper, looks up. He asks if they've hit anything important. That's the de Gaulle the world knew, ice-cold, unmoved by mortality. The car reaches a police checkpoint. Marroux reports the shooting. Within minutes, the roadblocks go up. The Delta Commando scatters. Bastien-Thiry watches his plan collapse in real time. He'd gambled that surprise and firepower would overcome armor and luck. He was wrong. De Gaulle lived. History pivoted on 8 seconds of gunfire and one driver's reflexes. The manhunt that followed was ruthless. Police arrested Bastien-Thiry within weeks. The interrogations were intense. The OAS network, exposed and bleeding, began to crumble. By early 1963, the major conspirators were either dead, imprisoned, or in exile. Bastien-Thiry was court-martialed and executed by firing squad in March 1963, one of the last death sentences carried out in France for political crime. But here's what fascinates me, looking back at the documents. The OAS didn't vanish. Cells continued operating for years. There were bombings, assassinations of suspected informants, acts of sabotage. The organization proved hydra-headed. Cut off one head and 3 more sprouted. De Gaulle's government eventually granted an amnesty in 1968, but by then the damage was done politically, socially, psychologically. What strikes me most is what didn't happen. If Marroux had hesitated, if the Citroën had stalled, if the bullets had found their mark, de Gaulle dies in 1962. There's no negotiated withdrawal from Algeria, or it happens differently. The Cold War's European balance shifts. The OAS potentially claims victory, emboldening similar movements across the continent. The entire trajectory of the 1960s unravels. Yet it didn't happen that way. Bastien-Thiry's conspiracy failed because of reflexes, engineering, and chance, the 3 elements no assassin can fully control. And that's the real story. Not the plot itself, but the fragility of power. De Gaulle survived because a driver accelerated. History turned on physics and instinct. The OAS faded into history. Bastien-Thiry became a martyr to some, a cautionary tale to others. De Gaulle finished his second term, retired in 1969, and died 2 years later in his country home, the same place he was driving toward when 8 seconds of gunfire changed nothing and everything. The Petit-Clamart ambush remains one of the most meticulously planned assassination attempts in modern history. Declassified files, interrogation records, and survivor testimony have since confirmed nearly every detail of the conspiracy. But what those documents can't capture is the chaos, the split-second decisions that determine whether empires endure or crumble. That's what I've learned covering these stories. History isn't written by grand ideology, it's written by reflexes. Subscribe to get the full file on the next assassination that almost rewrote history. New cases drop every week.